Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this whole video, okay. It's Colorado again, so let's just get that out of the way first. And we're talking about a guy named Randy Baker. His life wasn't the easiest, but things were looking up when he retired and he was gonna live out his golden years riding his hog. Phrasing. You know, like when deciding what topics I wanna cover and make videos about, I don't really have any kind of set criteria. I just like ones that have lots of twists and turns, and boy oh boy does this have those. So, without further ado, let's begin. Greeley, Colorado is our setting for today. It is at the very tippity top of Colorado, close to the Wyoming border. Population? Talking about like maybe 100,000 people, but what's really interesting about the city of Greeley is that it was originally set up as the Union Colony of Colorado. This was around 1869. No 69 jokes, I won't allow, and it was organized as a religious utopian society with high moral standards. As usual, high moral standards according to themselves. Actually, we're just great. No booze allowed, of course. Non-consumption of alcohol automatically rules you out from being a piece of shit. We all know this. That's been proven time and time again. And to get into this colony, which they must have been fighting them off with sticks, lads, you had to pay $160. Now, in 1870 money, that is, in 2021, about $3,200. A small price to pay to be of, high moral values, if you ask me. Man, it was so easy to scam people back then. Anyways, the reason I'm talking about all of this is because this video is about the descendants of those people. Did they keep up the good work? You tell me. Now, I'm going to stop myself from being a sarcastic bastard because there is one guy who genuinely did keep up the good work. And his name was Randy Baker. He was a lifetime local Greeleyan. He was 59 years old. Lucky to be 59, to be honest. He had, maybe 30 years before, been heavy into drugs, a partier, and dealt with, some unsavory types. His life was like the cantina scene, from Star Wars. He had to be careful or else, you'll be dead! He lost everything, did jail time, avoided prison, and came out the other side a changed man. That stint scared him straight. Did an L.U.E. on the road of life turn things around, and he wanted to be there for his daughter, Betty. Betty was Randy's daughter from his first marriage, a marriage to a woman named Dory. And he would go on to remarry his hairdresser, a quiet, nice woman named Kelly. And so, from there, he decided to go to school to help others, and he would be a role model for his family too, including his nephew, who had his own dealings in illicit substances. Randy Baker would go on to become a counsellor. When he wasn't working or counselling, he'd be out on the hog. I'm not gonna make that joke. The hog meaning his Harley. And so it was Wednesday, the 16th of August, 2017, at roughly 8:30 in the morning, that Randy's wife Kelly, after having been away for the night, she returned, the next morning. She opened the door into the house from the garage, and she found him, just inside the door, lying face down. It did not look good in the slightest. He had a bag of food with him, like he had just arrived himself, and he'd collapsed. But he was in like a pool of blood.
911, what is your name?
Kelly Baker.
Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
I just got home and I opened the door and my husband's dead on the floor.
Do you think he is beyond any help?
I don't know. I can't do it. I can't look.
She called the police and was waiting for them outside when they arrived. Randy was dead, she said. See, what it looked like was, Randy, he had a really bad heart. He had a cardiomyopathy, right? He had been dangerously electrocuted when he was 28 years old while he was working on power lines. And his doing of devil's dandruff and alcohol and kind of all that doesn't make for a good heart soup. Not good for your ticker after already having been zapped, so it seems like, all those years were catching up with him. His blood pressure was all over the place. He had been dozing off, dangerously having a snooze even while driving a number of times. And when I say number, I mean about 5 times that month alone. The day before he was found, he had fainted while driving due to low blood pressure. He had dinged up his car, and the cops arrived to give him a warning. So perhaps while, wandering in, he had fainted, collapsed, banged his noggin, and bled out. An examiner arrived at the scene in Randy's house, right? They spoke with his wife Kelly, Randy's sister Carol Baker, who was also there, and they had a go at the fella. Looked like, well, exactly kind of what it looked like. Natural causes tragic. It's very tragic, but it happens. There you have it. Thank you so much for watching. I really am kidding. There's so much more to go through from here. It looked like what it looked like until you took a step back and things didn't make sense. I mean, if he arrived home, with that food that we can clearly see, and he was, with his grub, he's gonna wolf it down, he just, well, if he just arrived home and he'd walked in from the garage, where was his vehicle? His vehicle was not there, nor his wallet. Now, he had banged up his car the previous day when he conked out while driving. But a quick check with mechanics in the area revealed, nope, he hadn't taken it to the shop. Maybe he got a taxi or something, while getting that food he was found with, but a check of their CCTV revealed that he had the car. Weird set of circumstances, and they got even weirder when the medical examiner, having a tinker with the body, found 2 bullet holes in Randy. He had collapsed alright because he had been shot dead. The bullet wounds weren't immediately, seeable because they were hidden by the blood, so it seemed like whoever shot him probably took his wallet, probably took his car. So tracking down those would be the best bet to finding the killer. Well, tracking from when he left work, he arrived at the food place, then headed home. The restaurant was maybe a 10-minute drive from there, and it looked like he'd been shot as soon as he set foot inside, so they had a good idea of when the murder took place. And how it took place. See, there were 2 different wounds in his head, from 2 different bullets. Was there 2 killers? They both had a pop. The usual questions were asked, anything in his past? Anybody out to get him? Anything, waiting for him? Kelly? She could think of anything. But she'd been separated from Randy for a couple of months. They'd separated in the spring before this August. She was 11 years younger than him and his caretaker to some degree, and, well, she couldn't take it much longer.
He was a very good counselor, and he wanted to change and help these people. Counselor. I was just thought maybe it's just a possibility somebody got released, because if Randy didn't go to prison, he must have knocked on. Or maybe that's not the right word.
So was this from his, his partying, druggy days, back then? Someone with a grudge? Well, before that question, there was another one.
Did Randy have any life insurance policies or anything like that?
Yes. There's actually 2 that they're $5,000 each, so it's totally $10,000.
Okay.
Oh, that's it? I mean, 10 grand. I wouldn't kick it out of bed for farting. You know what I'm saying? But I wouldn't, for it. I mean, it would be a slam dunk. She even admitted to, since moving out of Randy's, she was hooking up with somebody else. But no, that's not quite, eyebrow raising for me. Doesn't do it for me. Not really tickling me. It was on the 21st of August, 5 days after the murder, that Randy's car was found. It had been abandoned, plates removed, just dumped there, it seemed. It appeared to have been wiped down. Whoever did this knew what they were doing, and the police didn't get much from it. So they found the car, and someone would wish they hadn't, because shortly after, they also found an ad on Facebook. Someone was trying to sell it. From there began essentially a game of telephone. with this woman getting the car from this guy, who got it from this guy, with it eventually leading to Carol. Carol Baker, Randy's older sister. She passed the car on shortly after he had been killed, before he had been discovered. Police also learned that Randy and Carol fucking hated each other. So while she may not have done the deed, she certainly knew who did, and she wasn't gonna cry about it. Carol and Kelly were also busy mates. That's in fact how Randy and Kelly met. And they would text each other constantly. It was like a weird sort of melange of shit. Carol was also the last person known to have been in the house, having popped over at about 6 p.m. that day. So she was in the house and out of the house about an hour before Randy walked in and was shot dead. But again, what was weird is that, once they thought, hey, we got him, they didn't got him. Carol was confirmed to have been out of the house around the time, the police could tell Randy had been shot. And Kelly, the other person who may or may not have been in cahoots with Carol, was also 100% confirmed. She wasn't there. Neither of them were the shooter. So you got soon-to-be ex-wife, always a winner. And then you got sister who hated him. And they were like pigs in a blanket. But neither of them did it. Probably didn't do it. So the police started going through the texts Carol and Kelly were sending each other, And a name kept coming up, right? The name Sonia. Certain Sonia. The thing about Sonia was that it would be revealed there was no Sonia. Sonia, in fact, was the nephew of Randy Baker, the one who, himself had been involved in drugs. The one who had always looked up to Randy. And he had been in prison for attempted murder a few times. His name was also Kelly. Kelly Raisley. Kelly, who had, gang ties and went by the name Grizz. Oh, Lord. And he was the son of Carol Baker. So could he finally, scratch attempted off his CV? Carol, Kelly, and Kelly were brought in, and it was Carol, the mastermind, who broke first. How the police got her to break was genuinely fascinating. So, Kelly Baker, right, she kept saying she believed a drug dealer was the one who killed Randy. Something like, a past villain from the shadows. Some murky cantina boyo.
I don't like you either.
I wish you guys luck.
I'm glad you're doing fairly well, all things considered.
Now, by this stage, though, tisk, Kelly, the police were hiding their shit-eating grins. They knew she was involved, but, they decided to go along with her. Just play along with her for a bit. So, they printed out mugshots of local drug dealers and asked her to point to the one, she saw snooping around with Randy, who she thought might be involved in the murder. So, she pointed at mugshot number 2, a completely random dude she was essentially framing.
Do you identify something in there?
Yes.
Okay. There's a number above each one of the images, if you could circle the corresponding image over here. How confident are you that the individual you're picking is?
100%.
Okay.
She told the police she was 100% positive number 2 was the killer. And so the police used this to their advantage. They asked Carol to come down the next day and look at the same mugshots. But they knew Carol and Kelly, they were in cahoots. They spoke non-stop. They were like schoolgirls. And so they knew Kelly would probably tell Carol who to point the finger at. Dude number 2, right? Well, what if the police switched the mugshots? So now, mugshot number 2 was Carol's own son, Kelly Grizz Raisley. Carol, upon seeing the person she was supposed to point at was her own son, assumed that Kelly had sold her down the river, and she confessed. Carol was really not the mastermind. It was Kelly Baker.
Who was jumping in the house when you murdered her?
Nobody was there.
Just Kelly.
Had to be just Kelly.
Why did she feel she had to murder Randy Baker? What did she say?
Said he'd never leave her alone. I can't live like this anymore.
That was the plan that we did. Kelly Raisley was going to shoot and kill him. Is that correct?
Or some other way.
Okay.
I think I need an attorney.
You do? Okay. Well, you're under arrest for first-degree murder and conspiracy to first-degree murder.
We begin tonight with the shocking new details in the 3 family members now charged with conspiring to kill Randy Baker.
Greeley police released this new arrest report that shows that this man's wife and his sister and his nephew had reportedly been plotting to kill him for weeks. This newly released arrest affidavit shows a tangled web of family dysfunction. It says this summer his wife of 18 years, Kelly Baker, was having an affair and told Randy she was tired of waiting for him to die. His sister Carol, it says, helped his wife clear all the valuables out of their home and brought in her career criminal son, Kelly Raisley, accused of being the gunman.
Carol and Kelly, the wife Kelly, were arrested. Grizz, when he was taken in, he refused to say anything at all, for like 7 months. Until he decided to tell a little old story. He wrote it out, actually. He wrote it like a novel. This was in exchange for no death penalty. I'm giving you my confession to purge my own conscience and soul, but for my respect, admiration, and essentially the love I've truly always had for my uncle, the whole situation makes little sense, and it's just tragic. Yeah, like, this sucks, but what can you do? It's just tragic that these things happen. That's what he said. But it's like, you did it. Grizz would come out and say that he had been manipulated by both Carol and Kelly Baker, and that, they had told him just horrible things about Randy. He was abusive, he was a real bastard. Which is weird when he was Randy's nephew, and had known Randy his entire life, and always looked up to him, so it's like, you also knew Randy. Carol had been the last one inside Randy's house, but she wasn't there alone. Grizz was with her, and when she left, Grizz didn't.
Did you honestly know you hit him in the head when you fired?
Kind of seen it.
Grizz shot his Uncle Randy as he walked in the door with his food. He shot him twice, one with, he carried 2 guns, so he wanted to test them both out.
Why'd you bring 2 guns?
I always have 2 guns on me.
He then left in Randy's car, which he passed to his mother Carol, to this, to that, to them. Grizz's payment would be Randy's Harley and $10,000.
Were you approached ultimately and talked about what you get paid for doing this?
So you give you $10,000.
Okay.
And the motorcycle.
So why would, Carol and Kelly orchestrate this whole thing when Grizz got the valuable things Randy had? His bike and his life insurance, which was $10,000. Well, that's what Kelly said he had. She lied. He had a shitload more life insurance. Dance time. No. He had like 4 policies. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Not to mention, he had a big house too. Carol and Kelly would have presumably split what they would have gotten from Randy's death. Kelly Baker was the only one who wasn't talking. She maintained her innocence.
It's just a sad family affair.
It was on an August day, 2017. The end of Randy Baker's life is the beginning of one of the strangest murder cases the Weld County District Attorney's Office has ever worked.
Many of the murder cases that we prosecute are not really that mysterious at all. The answer in terms of the who is often known pretty quickly, and I think that's a lot of what made this case different.
Text messages between Randy's wife Kelly, his sister, and his nephew paint a picture of betrayal, hatred, and vengeance.
And there's a number of texts that they tried to delete that showed an utter hatred by Kelly Baker towards her husband, that she was having an affair, that she was best buddies with his sister who had the same hatred towards him.
When it came to trial though, both Carol and Grizz confessed and were offered plea deals. So Kelly Baker, she was sort of screwed. Their confessions revealed a hell of a lot more too. See, remember the dozing off of Randy when he was driving, like when he almost crashed? That wasn't only due to his heart, to his cardiomyopathy. The trio had also been spiking his morning smoothies with meds, hoping he'd, drive off a bridge or something, and they were spiking it with the meds he was already taking, so that, when tests were done, toxicology, whatever, he was already taking it, so it wouldn't be weird.
Because they're sweet. Anyway, you want to taste them, and they're not gonna to toxicology looking for it because he's already on it.
I mean, I suppose they would notice the amount in his system was weird, but, you know, they probably wouldn't investigate too much. He'd accidentally taken too many pills and fell asleep.
Randy Baker's own wife and his own sister were plotting with his own nephew to give this woman the day she felt like she had waited far too long for already.
During the trial, Grizz actually changed and said he knew nothing of any plan to kill Randy. Of course, you know, he'd already been in and out of jail and didn't want to be known as a snitch. Because they get stitches, I believe. I didn't know why he bothered when they already had his confession on tape.
Do you recall having discussions with your mom or Kelly Baker about a plan to harm Randy Baker?
No, I don't.
You got a Harley Davidson for this murder, is that right?
I got a Harley Davidson. Correct.
It's like trying to close the barn door after the Grizz has been spilled. Carol spoke.
We talked about how she can't believe he's still alive and, you know, he's sickly and he doesn't want to be here anymore.
As did Kelly Baker in her own defense. What really did Kelly in, though, was the one piece of evidence she shouldn't have had. There was a check for $420. No 420 jokes I won't allow. That Randy, he had for Kelly. He texted her saying, "I got that check for you," in that amount. But remember, his car and his wallet were missing after, you know, he was killed. Well, it's interesting because the day after he was killed, Kelly cashed that check. So how did she get it?
That means that you deposited a check from a dead man's wallet, right?
Correct.
A wallet that was missing, right?
Right.
From a car that was stolen.
Correct.
Stolen by a killer.
Right.
Who shot your husband.
Correct.
In a murder you claim you had absolutely nothing to do with.
Right.
I'm done with this witness, Judge.
Correct.
A Greeley woman will spend the rest of her life in prison for plotting the murder of her husband with his sister. 49-year-old Kelly Baker was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Her husband, Randy Baker, was killed at their Greeley home on August 16, 2017.
It didn't end well for Kelly in the end. She was sentenced to life without parole. Grizz also, life no parole. And Carol, 30 years and a slammer for you. And there you have it. That's the story of Randy, Kelly, Carol, and Kelly. Definitely keeping up with the Greeley tradition of high moral values, you know? High moral values which go out the door when, you know, the cheddar cheese becomes involved, as always. Demented stories of family doing in their own family. I always wonder, like, what part of this seems like it's a good idea? None is the correct answer.
Correct.
And I feel like it's been a while since we talked about a good old life insurance MOIDA policy. They're always good ones. Pretty high in that chapter. Bingo card. That, along with Ontario, Barking Big Dog, Florida. Man, certain things just keep coming up. And I don't even notice that they keep coming up until people point it out to me. I'm sure there's a lot of things which keep coming up. You guys send me the craziest things, which I don't even realize I do. But, you know, thanks. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to do so and be here with this guy. Here, go on. I'll see you as always real soon in the next video. Till then, please look after yourselves. Take care. I love you. Mike out.